As the world's population heads steadily towards the 8 billion mark, specialists have warned of the need for more sustainable farming practices. The increased population, coupled with increased farmland, means the future of our planet seems bleak. But there are some things we can do to help if we want to save the planet. Today we are discussing how farmers and environmentalists can unite to create a sustainable food system, so stay with us. First up, what is the problem at the moment? Just in case you've been living under a rock for the past month or two, Russia has just invaded its southern neighbor, Ukraine. But what does that have to do with creating a sustainable farming system, I hear you cry? Well, Russia is one of the biggest exporters on the planet due to the immense amount of land they have, and it's that which is worrying global food systems. Sanctions handed down by the powers that be around the world, including the UN, UK, and USA, have meant that Russia is facing economic hardships over the short term, but that will have a knock-on effect for the rest of the world as Russia readies itself for a response. Not only do the Russians export an immense amount of oil, which is heavily relied upon by mainland Europe, they also export a tremendous amount of wheat and not to mention fertilizers. Fertilizer is obviously huge in industrial farming, and if countries were to go without it, they would risk losing their entire crops, which would mean a massive impact on the local economy. This would have disastrous consequences in heavily agricultural markets, such as Brazil, where they rely on the export of products such as soybeans, amongst others. If we had a global sustainable food system in place, we would no longer have to rely solely on one country, like Russia, who could easily hold the agricultural world ransom. What have you made of the war in Ukraine? Next, we're discussing farmers and environmentalists creating a sustainable food system. Stick around. It's no secret that large-scale farming these days pits farmers and environmentalists against each other in a pretty black and white fashion, as it's often highlighted in the points made by people like British activist George Monbiot. His points are often so heavily in favor of environmentalists, but it's unrealistic to suggest that large-scale farming could or would just simply stop. His points risk pitting potential allies against each other, while he could in fact be creating a far more dangerous situation, as political extremists in the UK and other places seek to exploit his points by using underhanded techniques to undercut the progress we have made to preserve our nature and climate, while people are looking the other way. Agroecological and regenerative practices are on the rise globally, but these techniques are only really being used by progressive farmers, which there aren't many of. Agroecology focuses on rewilding previously used agricultural land and removing the industry's heavy reliance on some fossil fuels. This movement has been credited with being more sustainable, but progressive farmers can't do it alone. Farmers in general possess a great potential to affect change, but there can't just be a few of them doing it. They all need to pull in the same direction and work in conjunction with, not against, as too often happens, environmental campaigners. A lack of sustainable food systems is only going to pit nations against each other and will ultimately serve to increase tensions, not decrease them. So what are the solutions? Let's see. Some people around the world seem to think we should just plow up more of the earth and plant more crops, and set aside more land for meat-producing animals. But this approach wouldn't solve anything. The world is facing a food crisis, and right now in the UK, things are at a boiling point, with massive inflation and price increases on many food products. Because of the war in Ukraine, other countries around the world are restricting their exports in anticipation of a global food shortage. So what can other countries who rely on food imports do? Well, most countries around the world have at least some croppable land, some more than others. So we can make sure we're dedicating the land we have to feed people rather than fuel power stations or cars. The world has known about a potential food shortage for the better part of the last decade, but this hasn't stopped countries like the UK diverting land en masse to the production of biogas, which obviously people cannot eat. Some other commentators have suggested the population could switch to a plant-based diet, but this too has its own drawbacks. However, if everybody worked towards incorporating more plants into their diet, it could mean the amount of agricultural land needed globally could decrease by up to 75%, which is seriously significant. What are you doing to help the food crisis? Let us know below. What else can we do to combat the problem? Stay tuned to hear about it. The global food crisis has the potential to affect everyone on Earth in the very near future. So what else can we do to minimize the impact that it has on us? Well, there are quite a few things actually. First of all, we can all reduce our food waste. There is a bigger problem in developed countries, as people with a disposable income have no problem throwing out food that has been in the fridge for a few days. People in low-income countries don't have this problem, as there is generally not enough food in the fridge to start with, if they even have a fridge at all. But it isn't just poor people. Governments can also do their bit by improving roads, so it takes less time for deliveries, which in turn will stop fresh produce from rotting so quickly, and companies can improve their storage facilities. It's thought that each year, global food waste clocks in at around 1.3 billion tons, which is an incredible amount of waste. There are a few other things we can do, but mostly at a governmental level. Countries can reduce the risk of commercializing, improve trade policies, and promote diversification of products, so farmers aren't solely relying on just one product, which can have disastrous consequences should that crop fail. Governments could also work towards closing the yield gap, while also working towards defeating climate change, which is set to severely affect the production of food globally in the coming years. Some positive environmental news out of Chile Chile now. Stay with us. Having only recently taken office in his native country, Chile's new left-wing president, Gabriel Boric, has signed his country up for the UN's Escazú Agreement, which will see the world's top copper-producing nation take a tougher stance on climate change and environmental regulation, something which other countries can certainly look to for inspiration. Boric was sworn in last week and wasted no time in outlining his intentions for the country's environmental policy going forward, quickly signing his country up to the agreement, which had not been supported by the previous center-right administration of Sebastián Pinera. The new president said, "This agreement represents a milestone on the way to a new relationship between the state and its inhabitants in environmental matters. The agreement promotes the protection of the right of each person, of present and future generations, to live in a healthy environment and to sustainable development, and has so far been signed by Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico, as well as the new Chilean government. It will also address environmental rights, public participation in environmental decision-making, and will give much more legal protection to environmental defenders in Chile's law courts." Chile's new environmental minister, Maisa Rojas, is a climatologist who has claimed that we are facing the worst ecological crisis in history, and we need to face it jointly. We will not be successful alone, and she is probably right. But is this a great first step on the long journey ahead? What do you do to reduce climate change? A worrying environmental story out of the Amazon to finish now. Don't go anywhere. You've probably become accustomed to hearing about deforestation in the Amazon over the past 2 or 3 decades, but scientists are warning that we are fast approaching the point of no return. If we carry on the way we are going, researchers claim that we'll soon be at a tipping point where trees will die off en masse. One study has suggested that as time goes on, the lungs of the Earth are losing their ability to bounce back from threats such as drought, forest fires, and deforestation, which are all man-made problems in one way or another. It is thought that if we carry on living how we are living, then large parts of the Amazon could soon become sparsely populated savanna land, which could mean the death of millions of species of flora and fauna, and who knows what potentially undiscovered life-saving medications. The Amazon serves to trap carbon, which would otherwise add to global warming, so to say this issue is of the utmost importance is a massive understatement. Something needs to be done, and fast. The time for talking is over, and the time for action is now. Give us your thoughts on global warming below. As always, thanks for stopping by today, and remember to join us next time for some more fun reveals. Why not like, share, and subscribe to our channel while you're at it too. Bye guys!